Well, I arrived in Washington in August of 1968 as a congressional fellow. I was a PhD candidate at the University of Wisconsin working on a doctorate in political science. I'd completed my coursework and I came down to spend a year on Capitol Hill. I had a fellowship to do that, and then I'd planned to go back to Wisconsin and write my dissertation and teach, become a professor. When I got here in the fall of 1968, I got hooked up initially with Congressman Bill Steiger from Wisconsin, who I'd already known. I'd worked for the governor of Wisconsin for a year. And then through Bill, met a guy named Don Rumsfeld. And Secretary Rumsfeld at the point was a congressman. He joined the Nixon administration in the spring of 1969 as the director of the Office of Economic Opportunity and as also an assistant to the president. He always had two hats, running an agency, but he also then had office space in the West Wing. I had interviewed with Rumsfeld earlier, trying to get an assignment with him as a congressional fellow, and the interview was a disaster. He threw me out of his office. He thought I was some kind of fuzzy-headed academic, and he was probably right. I thought he was about the most arrogant young man I'd ever met. He was a 30-something congressman from Chicago. A few months later, though, when he was named to run OEO, he asked Bill Steiger, a friend of his, who was on the committee that oversaw OEO, Office of Economic Opportunity, for help in getting ready for his confirmation hearings and so forth. So I sat down one night unsolicited and wrote about a 12-page memo to Rumsfeld, advising him on how to handle himself in his confirmation hearings, what he should do with the agency once he was sworn in, and so forth. Gave it to Steiger. Bill liked it and passed it on to Rumsfeld. I didn't hear any more about it. And then a couple of weeks later, he was confirmed by the Senate, and I got a phone call that day from Frank Carlucci. Frank was helping Rumsfeld put together a transition team for OEO, and he invited me to come down and help out, to be part of a group of 40 or 50 academics and policy types that were going to meet the next day at the office at OEO. I went down, Rumsfeld came in, spoke to the group for about a half hour, then left. And then his secretary came in and said, "Is there somebody here named Cheney?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Come with me." Took me into his office, and I walked through the door to his office, and he looked up at me. He said, "You're Congressional Relations. Now get the hell out of here." And that's literally the way he hired me. He didn't say, "I liked your memo," or "I'm sorry I threw you out the last time you interviewed with me." But he'd read the memo. He obviously liked it. Talked to Bill Steiger about me, and at that point I went out and took over Congressional Relations.